Top 10 star believes Coco Gauff is underrated in some weird way. Andrea Petkovic dropped an interesting take on just how good Coco Gauff is, as the 2014 French Open semifinalist believes the reigning French Open champion is actually underrated. On Tennis Channel's The Big T podcast, Petkovic, Coco Vandeweghe, and Brad Gilbert were discussing whether Victoria Mboko had a higher ceiling than Gauff. At 21 years old, Gauff is a two-time Grand Slam champion, a one-time WTA Finals champion, has overall 10 titles in her collection, and has been ranked as high as number 2 in the world. On the other side, 19-year-old Mboko, who won last week's Qatar Open in Doha to secure her second WTA 1000 win, has 3 titles in her collection. By winning Doha, the Canadian, who was ranked outside the top 300 at the start of 2025, now sits at number 10 in the world. While Mboko has done some outstanding things over the past half a year, Petkovic refused to place the Canadian on the same level as Gauff, who in her opinion has one of the strongest champions' minds. Also, the German former world number 9 recalled losing to the American in 2019 Linz and thinking that the then 15-year-old was a generational talent. Petkovic, in a weird way, Gauff is underrated. I think Coco Gauff has one of the strongest champions' minds I have ever seen in a player being that young, with some flaws in her game, but always competing, the 2014 French Open semifinalist said. For me, Coco is somehow underrated even though she shouldn't have been. I don't know if you agree, but in a weird way, I feel like she's underrated. I played her when she was 15 and right away I thought to myself, this is a generational talent. I lost to Coco when she was 15 years old, and she won her first title. Gauff may have struggled with her consistency throughout her career, but that doesn't change the fact that she has achieved major success at a young age. Imagine blazing past expectations, winning Grand Slams, and consistently beating the top players in your sport, and still feeling like people don't quite get how remarkable you are. That's the paradox of modern sport. Even when athletes reach the highest peaks, they can feel eclipsed, not because their achievements are small, but because expectations, narratives, and comparisons can distort how they are seen. This curious dynamic is at the heart of recent tennis chatter, where a former top 10 player described Coco Gauff as underrated in some weird way. What does that mean? And why might it be true, even for one of the brightest stars in women's tennis? Pushpin Coco's career, too big to overlook. Yet, let's begin with the facts. Coco Gauff is not just any player. She's a multiple Grand Slam champion, has reached the very top of the women's rankings, and is widely regarded as one of the best players of her generation. As she won the US Open in 2023, a moment that instantly marked her as world-class. As she followed that with a French Open title in 2025, making her the first American to win Roland Garros in a decade and cementing her legacy on clay. Gauff has consistently been ranked in or near the top tier, peaking at number 2 in the world and regularly featuring in the top 5. Those aren't the stats of an underdog. They are the hallmarks of an elite champion. And yet, the underrated label isn't about achievements. It's about perception. When the former top 10 star called Gauff underrated, they weren't saying she's not world-class. They were speaking to a deeper narrative tension, one between what she has achieved and how she's perceived. Here's why that tension exists. 1. Public expectations versus player reality. Being a big name, especially one with star power, comes with strange expectations. When you win, people say of course. When you lose, critics say you're overrated. This is the double-edged sword of fame. Gauff's high profile means every result is magnified. A loss, even to another elite player, gets amplified as unexpected, while her wins are sometimes brushed off as simply what was supposed to happen. Meanwhile, inside the sport, many recognize how skilled she truly is. That contrast between internal respect and external undervaluation is exactly where underrated lives. Tennis racket and ball style and substance. The Gauff game isn't always scream-loud dominance. Another reason Gauff sometimes feels underrated is how she wins. There are players whose style is aggressively eye-catching, huge winners, blistering serves, relentless power. Gauff is all of those in her own right, but her game also features extraordinary court coverage, intelligent point construction, remarkable mental resilience under pressure. Fans sometimes overlook these subtleties because they don't always show up as flashing highlights. But they are the building blocks of true champions. A player who overwhelms with sheer force might appear more dominant at a glance, even if Gauff's achievements are just as, or more, impressive when you look deeper. Globe showing Europe-Africa comparison culture. The problem with Big Three or superstar labels. Tennis fans love lists, top 3, most dominant players, greatest of all time, and so on. The problem is, those lists tend to create fixed boxes. If you're inside that box, you're hyped. If you're just outside it, the narrative sometimes forgets you. Even though Gauff has Grand Slam titles and a strong ranking, she sometimes gets left out of casual lists, not because she doesn't belong, but because narratives are sticky and slow to adapt. That's why she can be a world-class superstar to insiders and journalists, and still be considered, oddly, underrated by parts of the wider public. Explosion symbol pressure and public reaction. The virality trap. Another modern factor is social media. Coco is one of the biggest names on tour, meaning her struggles get amplified, mistakes get viral coverage, emotional moments get dissected. Recently in Dubai, a tense on-court exchange with her coach went viral after a string of double faults and unforced errors in a match. Viewers debated whether it showed emotion or instability, missing the bigger picture of the difficulties elite athletes face mid-match. Criticism and praise alike zoom in on particular moments, but context gets lost. That's a big part of why someone with her resume can feel underrated. Glowing star the Gauff effect. More than just wins and losses. To fully understand why people feel she's underrated, it helps to look beyond results and into impact. Role model and cultural icon. Coco isn't just a top tennis player. She's a figure in global sport culture. She has crossover appeal beyond tennis fans. She's admired for her maturity, intelligence, and advocacy on and off court. Compare that to old-school tennis stars. Their media era was different. Today, athletes exist in a 24/7 commentary ecosystem. That means fans and critics are louder and more reactive, but also quicker to pigeonhole players based on snapshot impressions. So even when Gauff is doing incredible things, some of the deeper appreciation gets drowned out in the noise. Left-pointing magnifying glass statistical reality versus public narrative. Numbers don't lie. Multiple major titles? Check. Top rankings for seasons? Check. Consistent presence in high-level matches? Check. And yet, casual fans sometimes talk about her as if she's not quite there yet, a perception that just doesn't line up with facts. That mismatch between statistical reality and emotional perception